And the fifth dimension is what we call octopus families, right? Families who run the country, 200,000 octopus families whose wealth has grown exponentially in the last 20 years. These really are the people who rule modern India.
Yeah, hi Saurabh, how are you?
Hi, Vikas. I'm fine. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you. So, okay, hello everyone. There are a few investors who have joined here again for the first time. So, let me just introduce myself quickly and then I'll introduce Saurabh and we'll start the session. So, my name is Vikas Agrawal. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called AIF and PMS Experts India. In fact, we are emerging as one of the largest platforms for investing in alternate investment funds and portfolio management services. One of the thing that we do differently is that we have an internal framework, proprietary based framework, in which we evaluate the various portfolio managers and basis that we allocate funds. With me, on this conclave, the IF and PMS conclave, because we keep organizing this conclave is to educate and empower the investor community as a whole. And with me, I have someone special, Mr. Saurabh Mukherjea. Well, he doesn't need any kind of introduction. Most of you would have already followed him on various business channels like Z Business or CNBC. However, I personally requested him to come and speak to all our investors who are there on the platform now. So Saurabh is the founder and chief investment officer at Marcellus Investment Managers, and he brings about almost 2.5 decades of experience on the table. And Marcellus was found 5 years back. I still remember those days when we did a couple of roadshows together with Saurabh in order to educate investor community. So what we'll do is we want to deep dive about the subject which is there. So firstly, Saurabh, thank you so much for accepting our request and
My pleasure.
appreciate.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
So all yours, sir. I'm not wasting any more time and not coming in between investors and you. So what do
Thank
you?
you.
All of them are curious to
Vikas,
hear.
just give me a sense how much time. I've got half an hour, Vikas.
Yeah, we've got 30.
ठीक है जी, तो 30 मिनट में मैं कोशिश करता हूँ to add value to AIF and PMS's clients. So thank you so much. I've got a slideshow. I'll try to see how to beam it onto the screen.
Sure.
So the slideshow I've uploaded it. How do I share? Is it sharing the screen? Will that do it? Um, so I've uploaded the slides. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're there.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
fantastic. They're there. Outstanding. So, folks, we'll focus on understanding what's happening in the country because we've always believed in Marcellus that to make money in India, we have to understand the nature of change, social change, economic change, political change. अगर इन चीज़ों को समझ पाए तभी हिंदुस्तान में पैसा बन पाता है. Now, I find chess to be very interesting. It's not just an interesting game, and the game beamed up on the screen is particularly interesting. But I'm going to focus on a different aspect of chess. I think chess is a microcosm. Chess is a chota version of what's happening in the country, and I'll quickly explain why that is. And in a way, I'll use the example of chess to then tease out the rest of the big changes that are taking place in India. So India today has around 90 grandmasters. Grandmaster मतलब सबसे ऊंचा level का chess player. India has 90 grandmasters. That's a big number. It's the same number as the United States. So USA has the same number of grandmasters as India. 10 years ago, India only had about 20 grandmasters, right? So 20 has become 90. So 15% per annum, real terms में 15%, twice the rate of GDP growth पे चेस ग्रैंडमास्टर्स की संख्या बढ़ी है, राइट? एंड व्हाट्स इंटरेस्टिंग इज चेस ग्रैंडमास्टर्स की संख्या बढ़ी है विदाउट एनी गवर्नमेंट स्कीम, विदाउट एनी एडवर्टाइजिंग बाय द प्राइवेट सेक्टर. दिस इज बेसिकली बिकॉज कर्टसी जियो, सस्ता ब्रॉडबैंड, ऑलमोस्ट फ्री ब्रॉडबैंड मिला है मिडिल क्लास फैमिलीज को. Middle class families in India are driven, hungry, but the bachas have been inculcated in chess from an early age, and the result is आज 10 साल बाद, जहाँ के 10 साल पहले 20 ग्रैंड मास्टर्स थे, we now have 90 ग्रैंड मास्टर्स, right? Even more interestingly, 10 years ago we only had 2 women grandmasters. Today we have 20 women grandmasters, right? So women grandmasters की संख्या 10 साल में 10 गुना बढ़ी है, 2 से 20. That's a 26% CAGR in women grandmasters, and the men grandmasters की count has gone from 18 10 years ago to roughly 70 today. Men grandmasters growth is around 10% per annum, right? So this aspect is also symptomatic of India, right? एक तो पहला aspect I wanted to draw upon was middle class India का drive, courtesy cheap broadband, free broadband, how their aspirations have exploded. Secondly, women ka drive. Women in every aspect of Indian life, women are surging far ahead of men. The third interesting thing about these chess grandmasters is something like 80% come from peninsular India, right? Maharashtra and downwards, right? Tamil Nadu, Telangana, Karnataka, Andhra, Kerala, right? A small part of the country, which accounts for no more than 25% of the population, accounts for 80% of the chess grandmasters, right? And this is again symptomatic of what's happening in the country. South India is shooting ahead of the rest of the nation, right? This game is particularly interesting, but I think in the interest of time, I'll skip this game. Vidit Gujarati from Nashik is a extremely exciting player. Watch out for him. I think he'll go on to do great things in the world of chess, right? But बढ़ते हैं. The five big themes, which I find to be the most striking aspects of change as I travel around India with my colleagues, right? I'll quickly summarize and then we'll spend a little bit of time on each theme. Uh, 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 First is the rise of women. They are more educated than the men. They're earning more money than the men. They have more money in the bank accounts than men. And naturally, therefore, they're spending more money than men. And people like us, people who are interested in making money from investing, therefore find the rise of Indian women to be a very powerful investment theme to focus on. The second is education, and specifically the rise of a non-elite educated, non-elite education wala community. Right? This is not IIT education. This is not IIM education. This is non-foreign degrees, and yet what we are finding is the majority of Nifty 50 companies today are run by people with these perfectly ordinary degrees, seemingly ordinary degrees, non-IIT, non-IIM, non-foreign degrees. This is the first time we are seeing this change in India, that elite education has become a secondary driver of success in modern India, right? Third aspect is the seven southern states, right? I'm counting Maharashtra as southern. Maharashtra, Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Telangana, Andhra, throw in Goa as well. These states account for a quarter of the population, 50% of the GDP, and two-thirds of the growth in the country. This part of India is the fastest growing region in the world, and it's got a growth dynamic which is very different from the rest of the country. The fourth change is the much talked about China plus one dynamic, colossal, massive dynamic, transforming states like Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, and Tamil Nadu, right? Specifically those four states, because that's where much of the China plus one investments are taking place. And the fifth dimension is what we call octopus families, right? Families who run the country, 200,000 octopus families whose wealth has grown exponentially in the last 20 years. These really are the people who rule modern India. They are the Rajas and Ranis of modern India, right? So I'll go into a little bit of detail on each of these changes. Just a disclaimer, all the stocks mentioned here are part of Marcellus's portfolios. I am an investor in Marcellus's portfolios. So are my parents, and obviously, so are my 7,000 clients. They're all invested in the stocks that I'm going to show you on these screens, right? We're not going to spend lots of time discussing stocks, but I'm showing you the stocks in a way to illustrate the power of these themes in helping our clients make money. So as we were discussing, right, the first big theme is women. Broadly speaking, what's happened is as follows. Around 10 years ago was the first time that India had more more girls going to primary school than boys, right? I still remember there was a Mint newspaper ka front page headline tha, more girls in primary school than boys, right? That was 10 years ago. That has now resulted in a situation where today at every level of the education system, primary school, middle school, college, university, at each level of the education system, there are more girls studying than boys. And even more importantly, the pass rates for the women is much higher than the pass rates for men, right? So that this part is very clear from the data that the government of India publishes. What we can also see for the first time is data from the Reserve Bank of India showing that in urban and metropolitan areas, so metropolitan areas would be big cities like Bombay, urban would be a slightly smaller city like Pune, or an even smaller city like Sangli or Satara, right? So in urban and metropolitan women, for the first time since records were created, women now have more money in their bank accounts than men, right? So that's the bottom left chart. For the first time since records were created, women now have more money in their bank accounts like than men. Uh, in addition, women actually have more bank accounts than men. So women का average balance ज़्यादा है men से, and there are actually more women bank accounts than male bank accounts. We can also see in the RBI data that delinquency rates for women, default rates for women, is half that of the default rates for men, right? So these two blocks of data are clear: better educated and earning more money, right? The in between bit, which there is no data on, but which is a hypothesis I've created, is that given that women have more education than men and given that they're earning more than men, what I think is happening is the best jobs in the country, the best economic opportunities are going to the girls. Why is that? Part of the reason is 60% of our GDP is services, right? So hospitality, financial services, IT services. There is no muscle component in services jobs. It's about dimag and skill. And 17% of GDP is manufacturing, but most of our manufacturing also requires brains, right? Pharmaceuticals, iPhone manufacturing, dimag ka kaam hai, muscle ka kaam nahi hai. Therefore, 75% of GDP roughly has no muscle component, and that's where the jobs are getting created. That's where I think the girls are grabbing the good jobs because they're more educated than the boys. The result is women are earning more and have more money in the bank than men. Naturally, therefore, investors like us are trying to monetize that. An example of such an investment would be Eureka Forbes. It's part of our large and small cap portfolios. Sorry, it's part of our mid cap and small cap portfolios, Rising Giants and Little Champs. And part of the reason is in the last 5 years, if you go to a Chroma or a Vijay sales, if you go to a consumer durable store, they will tell you in the last 5 years, sales of water filters have doubled. As women get richer, they want to show their turn their greater affluence into comfort for their families, a status symbol for the family, a high-end water filter. The high-end water filters now cost 28,000 rupees. The entry-level water filters cost 4,000. So that entire spectrum gives the Indian woman an opportunity to both deliver comfort as a value-added product for her family, but also to show her neighbors that she is rising in the world. And we are seeing this increasingly in tier 2, tier 3 cities, rising sales of Eureka Forbes ka AquaGuard water filter. Right. So I'm not going to go do the rest of the examples in the interest of time. Let me go to the second theme, right? The second theme, as I was saying, is in the Nifty 50, what we are finding is the majority of the directors of the Nifty 50 companies no longer come from IIT, IIM, or overseas education, right? So what we did was we took data for 2003, 2013, and 2023. So for each of the 3 years, we identified the Nifty companies, and then we looked up their board directors, and then we looked up the educational qualifications. We looked up the educational qualifications of these board directors. And as you can see in the bottom left chart, what that trend is showing is that the dark blue area is non-IIT, non-IIM, non-foreign. That dark blue area is getting fatter and fatter, right? Today, at the apex of Indian corporate life, बिल्कुल चोटी पे corporate life के top of corporate life पे, the Nifty 50 boards, foreign educated and IIT, IIM people are in a minority, right? In fact, if I ask my venture capitalist friends, they're increasingly of the view that you back promoters, you back founders who are non-IIT, non-IIM because they say भूख ज़्यादा होती है, ability to work very long hours and take a lot of pain ज़्यादा होता है in the non-elite educated people, right? Now this bodes very well for the country because it suggests democratization of opportunity. Opportunity is no longer about आपकी इंग्लिश कितनी अच्छी है, आपके माँ बाप कौन से क्लब में बिलोंग करते हैं, आप कैसे जिन एंड टॉनिक पीते हो कॉकटेल पार्टी में. Opportunity is increasingly about, do you have entrepreneurial skills? Do you understand how to use modern technology, SAP, Salesforce, supply chain technology? And can you manage large culturally diverse teams? If you can do these three things, आपको टेक्नोलॉजी समझ आती है, आप entrepreneurial insights लाते हो, और आपको टीम मैनेजमेंट की skills है, then it's increasingly relevant where you study. In fact, even more fascinatingly, folks, what data is showing, and Rama Bijapurkar ji ka recent kitab Lilliput Land shows this very well. What data is showing is the best education in India is class 12. Class 12 ke baad college graduation actually is not adding meaningfully. Class 12 ke baad college graduation is actually not adding meaningfully to your earnings level. And I find that incredibly interesting that class 12 के बाद अगर आप बाकी आगे की पढ़ाई करते हो, आप elite करो, non elite करो, at the country level, actually earnings come off if as you keep adding years of education to what seems to be a perfectly adequate amount of education, which is class 12 pass, right? So read Rama Bijapur ji ka outstanding book Lilliput Land to appreciate this perspective. Very interesting perspective, right? And to take an example, in our portfolios for many years, in Little Champs and Rising Giants, we've had Fine Organics. This was created in 1971 by graduates from UD City. This is a chemical engineering college in Matunga in Mumbai, and Fine Organics has gone on to become the market leader for emulsifiers. Emulsifiers are the thing which hold the biscuits that you eat together. Nearly 3 out of 4 of India's biscuits, the emulsifiers come from Fine Organics. Right, let's move forward. The third theme is Southern India. Right, this is very striking. So as I'm sure you know, Southern India is growing faster than the rest of India. What's remarkable is just how small this part of the country is. Right, so even if you add Maharashtra and Goa to South India, we're only talking about roughly a quarter of the country's population, one third of the Lok Sabha seats. This part of the country, quarter of the population, accounts for half the GDP today. GDP growth here is consistently higher than the rest of the country. And therefore, 3/4 of India's GDP growth comes from these peninsular states, right? And as a result, as you can imagine, right, smart companies are over indexing on South India. They're saying, हमारा expansion primarily South India में होगा. तो अगर आप एशियन पेंट्स का डीलरशिप देखें, before COVID, Asian Paints had 50,000 dealerships. Today, I think the number is 1,70,000 ke aaspas. So almost more than trebling of the dealership count. The big jump in that dealership count is predominantly peninsular India. Similarly, if you see West Side's blockbuster, almost exponential growth in Zudio. Zudio is their affordable clothing line, 1,000 rupees ke niche ke kapde, right? So Zudio is opening one store a day. And so far the majority of Zudios have been peninsular India. So far the majority of growth in Zudio store count has been peninsular India. And as I'm sure you would have heard, you have seen trend treble inside our consistent compounder portfolio. Those of you who have invested in CCP with us would have seen trend treble. A big reason for trend share price trebling on us in the last 12 months is Zudio's exponential growth, where they're doubling store count. And in spite of doubling store count, sales per square feet is going up YOY. अब सोचिए आप स्टोर काउंट को डबल कर रहे हो, उसके बावजूद sales per square feet is going up YOY, which means you're getting exponential growth in revenues, and we as shareholders in Trent are benefiting from that. Right, just to move to the familiar theme, China plus one. This has been talked about extensively. I'm not going to get into the details of it, but let me just take a specific sector to explain the scale of the opportunity and the scale of what's transpiring in front of us. Right, so let's take the active pharmaceutical ingredient sector. Right, this is roughly a $170 billion industry. API production. Remember, API goes into dawai, into formulations, and that's what gives the dawai its potency, right? So API is a $170 billion industry. China makes roughly $100 billion of API. India makes less than $10 billion. India's largest producer of API is Divi's Lab. So as the West and China fell apart, right? As the West and China's relationship fell apart, beautifully explained in the book that I've highlighted on the screen. As the West relationship with China fell apart, we became very curious to understand, given that Divi's is the 5th largest API maker in the world and the largest in India, how much money could they make from this, right? And our research led us to double our position in Divi's Lab around 19 months ago, right? And we did it because we realized that Divi's clients, Divi's ka 90% revenues exports se aata hai. We realized that Divi's clients, firms like Merck, Pfizer, GSK, they were increasingly under regulatory and political pressure to reduce their dependence on China for API. And as we increased our position in Divi's, thankfully Divi's announced its third plant in 30 years. That third plant in 30 years, the third Divi's plant in Kakinada is almost an exclusive China plus one plant. It's focusing on manufacturing contrast media. Contrast media is the dye that you drink before you have an MRI scan, right? That's the dye that you drink before you have an MRI scan. China makes almost all the world's contrast media. Naturally, therefore, the Western countries want to reduce their dependence on China. And who are they coming to? They're coming to to Divi's lab, right? Now the opportunity is colossal, right? Just imagine, even if we take 10% of China's share, $10 billion, that means India's API production will double in the next 3-4 years, with Divi's at the vanguard of that. So we've stayed invested in Divi's. It's a large position. We keep increasing the position size as we get more and more visibility that China plus one is going to be a big feature of India's economy in the years to come, right? And the last piece I wanted to talk about is this aspect, this the octopus aspect, the rise of these incredibly rich 200,000 families who basically rule the country, right? So let's think about, how have we figured out 200,000? Where is this number coming from? So if you see the FY23 income tax data, if you see the FY23 income tax data, that shows that roughly 3 lakh families, 3 lakh families are filing IT returns, personal IT returns of 1 crore and upwards, right? Roughly 3 lakh families are filing personal IT returns of 1 crore and upwards. This number wasn't even 1.5 lakh 5 saal pehle. So in the space of 5 years, this number has gone from, I think, something like 70-80,000. It's gone up to 3 lakhs. It's gone up almost 3x in 5 years, right? The number of rich families declaring personal income tax, declaring income of more than a crore, has trebled in the last 5 years. As you can imagine, the same thing hasn't happened at the lower levels of the income strata. In fact, at the 5 lakh, at the 5 lakh level, the basic entry level criteria for paying income tax, at the 5 lakh level, numbers actually flat over the last 5 years. But at the elite level, 1 crore ke upar, numbers have doubled in the last 5 years, right? Now, there's another way to understand this, right? If you go to small town India, say tier 3, tier 4 towns, what you realize is roughly 10 to 15 families control these towns, right? And broadly speaking, what's happened in these to these families over the last 20 years is, 20 years ago they would have started out, say, as a grain trader or a arhatia or a vegetable trader in the APMC market, right? Sort of Bania family trading vegetables or trading grains in a grain market or in a wholesale fruit veg market in small town India. That was 20 years ago. Then as they did well from that trading business, they took that surplus and they set up a cold storage, right? That's often a natural progression for a family which does trade in fruit, veg, grain, right? They set up a cold storage. Apna bhi fayda hota hai. They can also let out the cold storage to other users in that small town. More importantly, having a cold storage allows you to hoard grain, fruit, veg, and sell when the prices are high. So then you take those excess profits from basically arbitraging fruit, veg, food grains over time. You arbitrage that over time, buy low, sell high. In between, you're keeping it in those cold storage. उससे आपका extra पैसा बचता है. And with that, they became, say, a Maruti dealer, right, or a Hero Motor dealer. As that boomed, remember, from 2004 to 2015, we had an epic boom in auto, right? Your two-wheeler dealership or your car dealership boomed. You then took up, say, a truck dealership. Ashok Leyland ka le liya, ya aapne Volvo Eicher ka truck dealership le liya. And by the time that did well, you were now wealthy enough to put your son or daughter into the local Zilla Parishad. थोड़ा पैसा वैसा spend करना पड़ता है, but you get your son or daughter into the local Zilla Parishad. You get into local government. एक बार ये families local government में घुस जाती है, फिर तो it's then strength to strength. They then know, for example, how to get local contracts, road contracts, construction contracts में जाते हैं जिसमें वो पैसा कमाते हैं. They also have early visibility. These families also have early visibility. कहाँ से सड़क निकलेगी, कहाँ से flyover जाएगा, and they can purchase the land ahead of others and then become local real estate developers, right? And उसके बाद अगली छलांग होती है, जिला परिषद से आप विधायक बन जाते हो. आप अपने बच्चे को पुश अप करते हो, कॉर्पोरेटर एंड देन विधायक. एंड बाय द टाइम यू गेट टू 2024, 15-20 such families will control, say, a city like Sangli or a city like Satara. A city like Pune will have 100-200 such families, and a city like Bombay or Delhi will have, say, a couple of thousand such families. At the country level, the income tax data suggests that roughly 2 lakh इस प्रकार के families इस देश पे राज कर रहे हैं. वही लोग पॉलिटिक्स चला रहे हैं, वही लोग बिजनेस चला रहे हैं, उन्हीं का स्कूल है, उन्हीं का ही हॉस्पिटल होता है. And therefore their ability to spend big is colossal, right? So if you look at, say, Tanishq, Titan has been a long standing holding for us in consistent compounders. If you look at Tanishq, the business which accounts for 80% of Titan's business, increasingly more than Tanishq, what's really driving their profitability growth is प्रीमियम ब्रांड्स लाइक जोया का ज्वेलरी आपको 8 लाख 9 लाख में एक पीस मिलता है per piece, and increasingly the premiumization of Tanishq's product through elite jewelry like Zoya is a critical driver of Titan's profitability. Similarly, अगर आप मोटरसाइकिल अगर और टू व्हीलर में देखें, the biggest surge in profit growth over the last 10 years has been Royal Enfield. And if you look at what Siddharth Lalji has done, what Siddharth ji has done is focus on making the bike bigger, more expensive, right? So 250 cc से अब वो all the way up to 600 cc इनका bikes extend करता है. And whilst they've launched the Hunter as a more affordable 250 cc bike aimed at the college crowd. The core of Royal Enfield's success has been in realizing that in small town India, or indeed even in big city India, people want to use the Royal Enfield bike and its, that throbbing sound, that duk 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 sound. They want to use that as a status symbol, and this is especially true in small town India, where both having an Enfield dealership is a point of huge pride, and obviously driving around the village in an Enfield in a 600 cc Enfield bike has become a real status symbol. Increasingly, what's even more interesting is increasingly in the suburbs of the big cities, I see women riding on Royal Enfield bikes. So for women, it's a double show of status, that I'm the equal of men, and I'm driving a high status bike, right? So that's the 5 changes I wanted to talk about. There's plenty more happening in India from an investor's perspective. However, these 5 changes are the ones that we have found to be the most salient changes to identify, to invest in. And I'm delighted to say that in the last few months, performance across our products has recovered very strongly. We're having, I think, the best 3-month period in performance terms that we've ever had. And a big part of that, I think, the credit for that goes to my colleagues for the enormous amount of hard work that went into identifying the themes and then doing the requisite traveling for identifying stock-specific aspects of these themes. I give you the disclaimer once again, folks. All of these stocks that I mentioned are in our portfolios, and through our portfolios, my parents, myself, and our 8,000 clients are investors in these stocks. Thank you, AFPMS. Thank you, Vikas, for this opportunity.